Hey guys, it's me, Kevin. I'm redoing the round 9 video. This is a different video because my last one had a big error in it with the GUI. I'm not doing any GUI now because I'm rushing. So I'll just get into the video. Oh yeah, by the way, I changed my tip from Port Adelaide to Adelaide, so I got that right. Right, so to start off the round, we head to Optus Stadium on Friday night when West Coast play Melbourne. I'll be tipping West Coast because Melbourne, well, they haven't been playing well. Only 3 and 5, and two of those games they didn't even play all that well. They only just won. Particularly last game where they only just beat Gold Coast, who are very inexperienced. West Coast, in the last 2 weeks, starting to get their confidence back, and now they're back at home against a very disappointing Melbourne side. I think West Coast will win comfortably. Saturday afternoon at the MCG, Collingwood versus St Kilda. I'll be tipping Collingwood. They're second on the ladder, only one win behind Geelong. St Kilda, they've slacked off since their 4-1 start, now 4-4. And I think they'll drop down to 4-5. I feel St Kilda, they were flat tracks in the first few rounds, and I don't think they're skilled enough to defeat a Collingwood side which has been playing some very good footy. On Saturday, 2:10 at the Gabba, Brisbane versus Adelaide. I'm tipping Brisbane because, let's face it, Brisbane almost beat Adelaide. They were one kick away from beating Adelaide last time they played last year. Adelaide were an average side, Brisbane were a bottom 4 side. This year, Brisbane and Adelaide are very similar. They are both in the top 8, both on 5 and 3, I believe. So I think I'll be tipping Brisbane. Also, it's at the Gabba. So I think the Gabba will be a strong fortress for Brisbane this year. Adelaide are playing some good footy. It will be a tough game, but I think Brisbane will get over the line. Saturday twilight, Geelong versus the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs are inconsistent. 4-4. Geelong, well, it's at home. They never lose at home. They're on top of the ladder. They never lose on top of the ladder. Well, okay, they do, but you know what I mean. So, Geelong at GMHBA on top. I'm going to be tipping Geelong. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm rushing because this wasn't my original video, just saying. Saturday night at Marvel Stadium, Essendon versus Fremantle. I'm going to be tipping Essendon. Fremantle have been playing very disappointing. So have Essendon, but Essendon, I think, have been playing better in their losses compared to Fremantle. Fremantle getting absolutely smashed to an undermanned Richmond at their home ground. Although Essendon weren't that great either, losing to bottom place Sydney, or previously bottom place Sydney. But look, they were competitive still. That's the key word here. Fremantle aren't competitive enough. And they're very inconsistent, very shaky. So that's why I'll be tipping Essendon at Marvel Stadium. In addition, Essendon generally play well against Fremantle at that venue. They haven't won since... Well, I'm not going to count it. I can't remember the last time Freo beat Essendon, but they've definitely lost the last 2 times. That's definite. Saturday night, Blundstone Arena, North Melbourne versus Sydney. North Melbourne played a good performance against Geelong after beating Carlton. They didn't win against Geelong, but they certainly played well. They got within 3 goals to them. Meanwhile, Sydney got back to the winners list after a win against Essendon on Friday night. But I'm going to be tipping North Melbourne purely because it's at Blundstone Arena. North Melbourne haven't lost at Blundstone Arena since very early 2017. So North Melbourne, considering they're playing a bottom 4 Sydney side, I think North Melbourne should start getting their season rolling. I still think they'll be in the bottom 4, but I think they'll probably be 15th because they've got a few advantages in Tassie. So I think North Melbourne will win easy in Tassie. Sunday afternoon at Adelaide Oval, Port Adelaide versus Gold Coast. Look, they're very inconsistent. Both teams are very inconsistent. Both teams can be very competitive. But Gold Coast at their best is not as good as Port Adelaide at their best, which is why I'm tipping Port Adelaide. And it's also at home. Look, Port Adelaide, they show promise in some games, like the way they played against West Coast and Melbourne, for example. And then they lose games like... Who did they lose to last week? Oh no, they lost to Adelaide. That was understandable. But they lost to Richmond back in round 4. That was a throwaway match. Port Adelaide very inconsistent, but against an inexperienced Gold Coast side, I'll be tipping Port Adelaide. Sunday afternoon at the MCG, Hawthorn versus Richmond. Again, Hawthorn at their best is not as good as Richmond at their best. Both teams won last week impressively, Hawthorn upsetting Premiership favourites GWS, while an undermanned Richmond beat Fremantle on the road. And Richmond usually don't play well on the road. And I think if Richmond play with that manic style they did last week against Freo, I think Richmond will win this game. And lastly, Sunday, twilight, GWS versus Carlton. Given that Carlton is the only team that's only won one game, they're last on the ladder. GWS, they'll want to bounce back from a disappointing game against Hawthorn. But in general, they've been up in the top 3. So that's why I'm tipping GWS. So to recap my tips, I'm tipping West Coast, Collingwood, Brisbane. Who else? Fuck, now I forgot. Geelong, Essendon, North Melbourne, Port Adelaide, Richmond, and GWS. Now, please subscribe, like the video, comment your tips or what you think down below. Sorry there wasn't any GUI. I'll try and properly edit a video next week because the last 2 weeks I haven't used GUI due to editing errors. I'll try and see what the problem is and I'll try and solve it. Otherwise, I'll just upload it again without no GUI next week. But I'll sort that thing out later. Anyway, I'll see you next week. Bye.